Look, my new Santa Claus mug. Okay, I think we've all had the experience of taking a long road trip with our family, even knowing where your destination is and what it will be like, and knowing roughly how long it'll take to get there. There's a certain tension between enjoying the trip itself and wanting to be there already. If you have children in the car, you might need to play games to pass the time, or you might hand them a device and say, "Here, watch a movie and don't bother me. I'm trying to drive here." The one thing that would make the trip really hard to handle would be if you had no clue what your destination would be like. We all want to know where we're going and, more or less, what to expect. We're told in life that we need to appreciate the moment and enjoy the journey. But enjoying the journey and the moment would both be almost intolerable if we didn't first have a mental image of the destination, knowing what we're in for. That's why the season leading up to Christmas is something we enjoy so much. We know where we're going, but we want to savor the trip to get there. So we string up lights and other decorations, we put up a tree, we consume enough calories to go into hibernation, and we make plans to spend time with family and friends. Except, of course, this year will be really different for most of us. Spending that special time with others might not be a safe or realistic thing with the pandemic going on, and that really stinks. But we'll make it through. This year, Christmas may not feel like the Christmas we're used to or what we want it to be, but we can still find new ways to anticipate it and to celebrate it. In the church, we have a special name for that journey, and we call it Advent. All Advent means is we're on our way to something wonderful. And just like a road trip, we know what the destination will be. Christmas Day, thanking God for the gift of Jesus, for coming into the world to live with us in a very personal way, to explain and demonstrate what it means to live and love and be fully human, to show that hope, peace, joy, and love are not naive, abstract ideas from a fairy tale, but are very real in this imperfect world we live in. Now, oddly enough, it's the imperfection that makes the anticipation so great. We're not naive. We know that life can be hard and unfair and disappointing and sad and uncertain, and this year we've certainly had our fill of that. And even though this holiday season we're forced to do things differently, to scale back or modify our traditions and celebrations, paradoxically, I think it might just be the case, it might just cause us, rather, to appreciate all the more what Christmas means, to not take it for granted if we've ever been guilty of doing that. I hope we've learned not to take anything for granted. And maybe this year we'll realize that spending money on stuff and consuming objects we don't really need is never a substitute for simply celebrating love and sharing love. Every year, our church provides Christmas gifts for young people at Bethany Children's Home. These are kids who no longer have a safe or functional home or healthy relationships with their parents or family. So, we buy them things that are really more than things. A basketball or a sweatshirt or a pair of sneakers are all material objects, but they're really symbols in the best sense of the word. They are physical representations of hope, peace, joy, and love. They're our way of sharing communion, the presence of Christ in this moment. Now, I don't say that to make us feel good, because patting ourselves on the back is not the point. The point is that in the imperfect, unfair, and hurting world that we inhabit, we all need hope, peace, joy, and love on our journey, and to believe our destination is a place of goodness and grace. Whether we're living in a children's home or if we're lucky enough to be surrounded by a solid, loving family, we all need that. Sometimes we tend to separate our experience of life from all the people who came before us. Unlike people in history, we know that the earth is not flat, unless you belong to the Flat Earth Society. We know all about viruses and bacteria, so when someone gets the flu or COVID, we don't think it's some evil spirit inhabiting that person. We don't attribute the weather to the mood swings of the gods. In fact, we've learned the hard way that our activity can affect our climate. We now know that the categories we lump people into based on their skin color or shape of their eyes or the texture of their hair are absolutely meaningless at the genetic level, that race is really a social concept. It's not a scientific reality. We know now that a person's sexual orientation or gender identity is not a choice, any more than I could have chosen to be over 6 feet tall, which I would have. Knowing all we know about science and knowing all we know about how history has gone down, about mistakes people have made that could have been avoided, that can give us a false sense of superiority over our ancestors. So it's fascinating to realize how much we are actually just like them. And we know that from the works that they left behind, the artifacts, the structures, the stories. The fact that I have hot and cold running water and a home with Wi-Fi does not mean that my great-great-great-great-grandmother, who lived very long ago in County Cork, Ireland, did not have the same experience of being human that I do. She likely lost sleep worrying about her children. She would step outside her home at night and look up at the starry sky and think how beautiful and mysterious it is. She went to church and prayed for a neighbor who was sick, and she lit a candle. She sang happy songs and enjoyed a good meal with people she loved. She got frustrated and angry when people let her down. She got tired at the end of a long day and energized at the thought of a celebration coming up. She loved a good story. She was self-conscious about her modest clothing when a wealthy woman walked past in a fancy dress. She hoped the crops would not be destroyed by blight, so that she would have economic stability. She wished for a good and happy life for herself and her family. She needed affection and tenderness and security and belonging, and she looked forward to things, to a destination, to see herself through any hard times in her present moment. So her needs, her feelings, her hopes and dreams, they don't differ from mine. And aside from the DNA we share, her needs and feelings and hopes and dreams are what really ties me to her and to everyone in the long chain of humanity reaching back tens of thousands of years. We are so much more alike than we are different, across time and across different distances. We all understand the coming and going of the seasons in life and why it's important to our emotional and spiritual health to have something to hope for while we're on our journey, to have seasons of anticipation and seasons of fulfillment, to know that hope, peace, joy, and love are not naive abstract ideas from a fairy tale, but are very real in the midst of this imperfect world that we're all navigating. The one whose birth we'll celebrate 4 weeks from now, when he lived among us up close and personal, might have understood all of that better than anyone else. Jesus spent his time in what we have recorded as his words, telling us that God is both in our future, but also very much in our present. That it's like being on a journey, hoping for what's to come, and all the while discovering God in the midst of our moments of anticipation. So God is real while we're looking and waiting and watching. God is real when we're filled with hope, and even when we've lost hope and are yearning for any light at the end of the tunnel. God is real when we're at peace, and even when we're desperately in need of safety and security in our hearts and minds. God is real when we're joyful, and even when we yearn for anything to celebrate. God is real when we know we're loved, and even when we're seeking acceptance and belonging and support. God is real in giving and in receiving a basketball or a sweatshirt or a pair of sneakers. Jesus knew the world can be hard and unfair and disappointing and sad and uncertain. But the more powerful, enduring reality that's always been true is how we make our way through this place, this moment in time, traveling on together in hope, peace, joy, and love, finding God in the present because we know the truth of our destination, that in God's love, our journey never ends.